So if you could have any superpower in the world, what would it be?
Money.
Maybe you wish you could fly and soar across the sky. Maybe you wish you were lightning fast or strong enough to stop a speeding train. How cool would it be if you were invisible or could teleport and go back in time? Well, those are all great superpowers, and don't laugh. But when I was a little girl, I wished I had superpowers that can save the world. And I remember the day that I discovered my secret superpower like it was yesterday. I was 10 years old, and my 4th grade class was going on a field trip to clean up the park. And I was the most excited kid in class because my favorite superhero was Captain Planet. And he was the coolest superhero because he had every superpower that you can think of, but he used it specifically to save the environment from pollution and crime. And the best part is that he didn't do it alone. He had 5 teenagers from all over the world that he called the Planeteers. And when their powers combined, Captain Planet would come and help them save the day together. So can you imagine my enthusiasm? I wasn't just gonna go to the park to clean up trash. I was gonna get to be like my favorite superhero with my friends for the day. I couldn't wait to get home and ask my mom for permission. I remember my bus pulled up to the house, I bust in through the door, and I start telling my mom all about the field trip. And without even allowing me to finish or looking at the field trip form, she just said, no. And I stood there in shock. What do you mean, no? Why can't I go? And she looked at me rather annoyed and she said, you're not going because number 1, you know that we work several jobs just to pay the rent and put food on the table. We don't have money for extra things like this. And number 2, if I can't be there to chaperone, I don't think that that's safe. So I need you to go to your room and do your homework, and I don't want to hear another word about this field trip, okay? And it wasn't okay. I was so angry. My dream of being a superhero was just shattered. But I knew better than to say another word. And I stomped off to my room, and I couldn't even do my homework because I was crying practically all night. The next morning, my eyes were all puffy as I boarded the bus, and I didn't say hello to anyone, and I sat by myself, which I never do. I dragged my feet all the way to class, as all of my friends were all buzzing with enthusiasm, turning in their field trip forms. Everyone but me. I wanted to burst into tears. I went over to my desk and just kind of slumped down, wishing that no one would notice me. I wished that I was invisible in that moment. But my 4th grade teacher, Ms. Gyro, noticed me. She saw me and she walked over to my desk. And she bent down and she whispered, meet me outside. And I got scared. I wiped off my tears. I thought I was in trouble, and I just went straight outside. We go outside, and she looks at me and she says, darling, what's wrong? And I took that deep breath, trying to explain, but you know how badly I wanted to go on this field trip, but my parents said I can't. I was gonna have superpowers, and now I can't, and it's just not fair. And she got down on one knee, and she looked straight at me, and she said, you don't need to go on this field trip in order to be a superhero. You already have a superpower. I do? I looked at her in disbelief as she said 4 words to me that I have never forgotten till this day. She said, kindness is your superpower. And I looked at her like, what? Come on. What do you mean kindness is my superpower? She said, yes. And I watch you use your superpower of kindness every single day. You come to school and the first thing that you say is good morning. And you look at me and you smile. And that smile of yours brightens up my whole day. I see you when you hold the door open for the person behind you. And you even push the chairs in after class to make sure that nobody trips. I hear you when you say please and thank you and you compliment people. I can always count on you to listen and pay attention in class, and you even help others with their homework. And every time you do those things, you are exercising your superpower of kindness, and it is enough to change the world. Whoa. And that brief conversation ended up being a defining moment in my life, because in an instant, the worst day ever became the best day ever, because I went from feeling sad, helpless, and totally insignificant to feeling acknowledged, appreciated, and empowered to discover that I had this superpower within me that I didn't even know I had. And guess what? I want to let you in on the world's best kept secret. Kindness is your superpower too. Now, can you imagine how radically different our world would be if we taught our kids to believe that they had this superpower of kindness within them? At 10 years old, I became living proof of Aesop's famous quote, "No act of kindness, no matter how small, is ever wasted." Because from that moment on, I began performing acts of random kindness with this new sense of purpose, passion, and power that grew stronger within me the more I exercised it. By the time I made it to high school, that kindness muscle was strong. But I kept my superpower all to myself. I was scared to share my secret. I was scared of being judged or labeled as a brag. But in 9th grade, I was blessed with another kind teacher, Mr. Plaza, who saw this spark of kindness in me and insisted that I ran for president of the school's community service club called the Interact Club. And I turned him down several times. I pleaded with him to just allow me to run for secretary or treasurer or just a member. Believe it or not, I was incredibly shy, and I was terrified to speak in front of people. Well, not only did Mr. Plaza completely ignore my plea, I was voted unanimously as president, and he sparked this massive ripple effect in my life, because 4 years later, I ended up graduating high school with over 3,000 hours of community service events and leadership roles that earned me Hall of Fame status, several prestigious awards, and scholarships. And all of a sudden, I was a first-generation Hispanic student with the choice of going to any school in the nation that I wanted with a fully paid bachelor's and master's degree. I began to realize that being kind pays off, literally. One of my scholarships paid for me to go on this week-long leadership retreat called Leadership. And I was asked a big question at this retreat. If you knew you had a superpower that could change the world, what kind of world would you create? That's a big question. And most students kind of struggled with answering it. I was excited. I felt like I had been preparing to answer this question since I was 10 years old. And before I share with you my answer, suffice it to say, I came back on campus fired up. And I started an event on campus that grew to be one of the largest student-ran philanthropic events in all of South Florida, raising well over $1 million in the fight against cancer. And it continues to grow to this day, over a dozen years later. And that event belonged to one of the largest nonprofits in the US. And my relentless effort to make this happen caught their attention. And the next thing I knew, I was being offered a job to do the exact same work that I had been doing as a volunteer since I was 15 years old. At 21 years old, I realized that I can make a living doing what I love and exercising my superpower of kindness every day. I was in heaven. Now, while working for the nonprofit full-time and going to graduate school full-time, I was randomly offered another dream job. A casual meeting turned into this impromptu interview. And the next thing I knew, I was working for local government, planning the city's large-scale events for an entire community of over 40,000 people year-round. I officially became a public servant. And I was totally consumed by my job. After graduation, it was really easy for me to fall into this proverbial hamster wheel of life, day after day after day. And I put my dreams and my superpower and my vision for changing the world on the back burner for 3.5 years. Until one day I found myself sitting at my desk with the lights off, suffering from a chronic migraines. And I realized that I was being incredibly unkind to myself. I was unhappy, I was unhealthy, and I was incredibly unfulfilled by the work that I was doing. Now let me ask you, friends, how many of you have been in a point in your life, whether it's work or a relationship or a particular circumstance, where you knew that you knew there's got to be more than this? In that moment, I knew that I had fallen into the trap of complacency. And I knew that I had to quit what I once considered my dream job. And let me tell you, I remember sobbing hysterically as I wrote my resignation letter. I was terrified because I had absolutely no idea what I was gonna do or how I was gonna do it. But in 2010, I decided to take a massive leap of faith in myself, and I became a full-time philanthropist, inspirational speaker, and event creator. Within 6 months of starting my business, I decided to start a nonprofit with my husband and my family called the Park Project. And Park is in honor of that field trip that I didn't get to go on. And it is also an acronym for my mission, which is to inspire people to perform acts of random kindness. And if you're still wondering what my answer was at that leadership retreat that I went to 6 years earlier, that answer became the vision statement for Park Project. If I knew that I had a superpower that could change the world, my vision is to create a world where everyone performs acts of random kindness. And I turned our vision statement into an acronym as well, and our hashtag for the movement, We Park. Because I know that the power to change the world does not just rest in me. It is up to we. And I am convinced that if we park every day in small ways, we can heal mankind together. We can create the massive shift that this world desperately needs. Now, I'm sure some of you have heard the quote by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. And Park Project is a great testament of this quote, because our very first large-scale event was on the 10th anniversary of 9/11. We decided to produce a 5K to remember, honor, and celebrate our servicemen and women and their families. We produced this event in under 3 months with absolutely no business plan, no big name sponsors, no marketing budget, no email list, and absolutely no social media following. Our only resource was a small group of committed people who believed in our vision and the power of kindness. Pulling off that first 5K was nothing short of a miracle. We inspired over 600 people to participate, and we donated $13,000 to 5 local nonprofits. And that event grew into the award-winning 5K Park Fest, which has inspired thousands of people to park, and we've donated over $50,000 to well over 100 nonprofits and schools in just 3 short years. And my friends, I will not stand here in front of you and pretend like any part of this journey was easy. Have there been numerous challenges to overcome along the way? Yes. Do I realize that we are climbing a long staircase together? Yes. But do I believe that our vision is achievable and worth pursuing? Yes, yes. In the words of the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you don't have to see the full staircase. You just have to take the first step. And I stand before you today as that same 10-year-old little girl who wished that she had superpowers that can save the world. And I chose to take that first step in faith and believe that kindness is my superpower. And I'm asking all of you to take that first step in faith together with me. Because you and me and we all have the power to be the spark of kindness. No matter who you are, how old you are, where you come from, or how much money you have. I believe that the power to change the world rests in we. I believe that this simple idea is worth spreading worldwide. And I am confident that change starts here and now, the moment that you decide to be the spark and perform acts of random kindness. It's like my favorite superhero, Captain Planet, always said, the power is yours. But I've learned that only if our powers combine can we park and save the world together. Thank you.